In the darkness backstage, the man who made the whole world laugh sat with his head in his hands. Moments ago, an audience had been roaring at his jokes, but now the spotlight was off, and Robin Williams was utterly alone with the shadows he'd been running from. In his final months, this comedic genius, the bright, frenetic spark on stage, was plagued by a chilling fear that he'd lost his gift. At one point, he even broke down and confessed through tears, "I don't know how to be funny anymore." How could the same man who brought joy to millions carry so much hidden pain? This is the emotional journey of Robin Williams, a story of dazzling laughter, private battles, and the heavy cost of a brilliant mind. Hello everyone, and welcome back to our channel. Today we delve into the rise of a comedy legend and the heartbreaking truth behind his humor. This isn't a documentary reciting dates and films. It's a human story, one of sparkling wit and deep sorrow, of a man who wore laughter like armor against his own vulnerabilities. Get ready for a gripping, emotional ride through the life of Robin Williams, told in chapters like the acts of an extraordinary play. Robin McLaurin Williams was born in Chicago in 1951, the only child of a Ford executive father and a former model mother. He grew up in a big house in an affluent Detroit suburb, comfortable but lonely. "I was so fucking quiet," Robin later recalled of his childhood. He spent hours alone, entertaining himself with imaginary characters and voices. Making others laugh became his survival tool, a way to grab the attention of his busy parents. He discovered early that a well-timed joke could crack even his stern dad's demeanor. Once young Robin saw his normally reserved father explode into laughter at comedian Jonathan Winters on TV, and the boy thought, "Who is this magical person who can make my dad laugh like that?" In that moment, a spark ignited in Robin. He realized humor held power. It could earn him love and light in a room, a remedy for isolation. Fueled by that spark of madness, a spark he swore he must never lose, Robin pursued performing with a singular passion. He was a quiet kid with a loud imagination, and once that imagination found an outlet on stage, it was like uncorking lightning. In the mid-1970s, Robin started doing stand-up comedy in San Francisco and Los Angeles, where his frenetic energy and rapid-fire improvisations quickly made him a standout. He had a high-wire act of verbal dexterity, delivering punchline after punchline as if powered by endless fuel. Nothing about his act was predictable. He'd careen from one character to another in the blink of an eye, leaving audiences breathless with laughter. On stage, Robin was a vital force, a man possessed by humor. A single word or a random heckle could set off a chain reaction of improvised jokes. His good friend Billy Crystal later said, "Doing a set with Robin was like trying to lasso a comet." That's how wild and brilliant Robin's comic mind was. Robin himself described his comedy as an explosion. "For me, comedy starts as a spew, a kind of explosion. It comes out of a deeper, darker side." That's right. From the very beginning, Robin hinted that the source of his laughter was not pure light, but something deeper, perhaps darker, inside him. "Maybe it comes from anger," he said, "because I'm outraged by cruel absurdities, the hypocrisy that exists everywhere, even within yourself." His need to make people laugh was almost primal. Like breathing for him, one director observed. The laughter of others wasn't just a bonus, it was his lifeblood. Every laugh was a jolt of validation, an endorphin rush. As Crystal put it, that laugh is the drug. That thrill is really hard to replace with anything else. Robin's big break came in the unlikeliest of ways. In 1978, he was cast as a bizarre alien named Mork from Ork on an episode of the TV show Happy Days. What was meant as a one-off guest spot turned into a showcase of Robin's comedic superpowers. He stole the show with his kooky, otherworldly improv as Mork, even sitting upside down in a chair during the audition to stand out. Audiences loved this strange, hilarious alien, and Robin's performance was so electrifying that the network gave him a spin-off sitcom, Mork and Mindy, 1978 to 1982. Practically overnight, Robin Williams rocketed to fame as America's favorite alien goofball. The show was a hit, and suddenly the wide-eyed kid who once played alone in his room had millions of people tuning in to see his antics every week. By his late 20s, Robin had become a star, but fame was a double-edged sword. On one hand, it fulfilled his longing for acceptance. Everyone was laughing with him now. He moved into movies, scoring his first lead film role as the title character in Popeye, 1980. By the late 1980s and early 90s, he was not just a comedic actor, but a critically acclaimed one, earning Oscar nominations for dramas like Good Morning, Vietnam, 1987, Dead Poets Society, 1989, and The Fisher King, 1991. In these roles, he showed a soulful, serious side beneath the humor, the inspiring English teacher, the caring therapist, as if tapping into his own well of feeling. Off-camera, he was beloved by colleagues for his generosity and unstoppable humor during press junkets and talk shows. It seemed Robin Williams was unstoppable. Yet behind that manic joy lived another reality. As Robin's star rose, so did the emotional cost of his genius. The pressure to be on all the time, to meet the world's expectation of him as the funniest man alive, was immense. And Robin, ever the sensitive soul, felt that pressure keenly. A former classmate from Juilliard, the esteemed actor Christopher Reeve, once noted that Robin had two speeds, hyperdrive and off. When he wasn't performing, when the audience's laughter died down, Robin could become strangely quiet, even somber. It was as if the laughs filled a void in him, a void of self-doubt and loneliness that never quite went away. In private moments, the clown prince of comedy wrestled with insecurity. Was he truly loved for himself, or only for the joy he could give? Would the laughter stop if he ever revealed his own pain? At the height of his early fame, Robin found an easy way to push aside those nagging demons. He simply never slowed down. He worked constantly, leaping from stage to TV to films, as if afraid that if he ever stopped, the darkness might catch up. In one 2-year period, I made 8 movies, he later reflected. You have this idea that you'd better keep working or people will forget, and that was dangerous. The frantic pace took its toll. By the early 1980s, Robin, like many comedians of that era, had fallen into the grip of cocaine and alcohol. The comedy world of the late 70s was swimming in cocaine. It was the era of wild parties at the Chateau Marmont, of fellow comedians like John Belushi chasing highs after their shows. Robin was a big drinker and a cocaine addict in those days, by his own admission. But in a twist of irony, he didn't use cocaine to get wild. He used it to calm down. Cocaine was a place to hide, he said. Most people get hyper on coke. It slowed me down. Imagine that. His mind raced so fast naturally that a hardcore stimulant actually slowed him to a manageable speed. For Robin, drugs and booze became an escape hatch from the whirlwind of his own mind, a way to self-medicate the anxiety and the exhaustion that came after the laughter. This dangerous coping mechanism might have continued if not for a tragic wake-up call. On March 5, 1982, Robin's dear friend and comedic peer John Belushi died of an overdose. Robin had been with Belushi just hours before his death, and the loss shook him profoundly. Around the same time, Robin's first wife Valerie was pregnant with their son Zachary. In that convergence of personal events, losing a friend to drugs and preparing to become a father, Robin found the strength to confront his own addictions. His death scared a whole group of show business people. It caused a big exodus from drugs, Robin said of Belushi's passing. And for me, there was a baby coming. I knew I couldn't be a father and live that kind of life. And so, in 1982, Robin Williams did something extraordinary. He quit cold turkey. He walked away from cocaine and alcohol entirely, determined to save himself for his family and his future. For the next 20 years, Robin remained sober. It was a hard-won peace. He channeled all that wild energy into his work. And oh, how it paid off. The late 80s and early 90s saw Robin soar to even greater heights. He headlined hit films, deftly balancing comedy and drama. In 1993, he delighted families as the madcap nanny in Mrs. Doubtfire. In 1995, he took us on a wild adventure in Jumanji. And in 1997, Robin's dramatic chops earned him the ultimate accolade, an Academy Award. His role as the empathetic therapist in Good Will Hunting won him the Oscar for Best Supporting Actor, a moment of triumph after 4 previous nominations. Robin Williams clutching his Oscar for Good Will Hunting, 1998, a smile of triumph masking years of personal struggle. At that Oscar ceremony in March 1998, Robin's grin was as wide as ever, his eyes twinkling with tears of joy as he thanked his longtime friends and his family. Here he was, at the pinnacle of success, the world acknowledging not just his comic genius, but his depth as an actor and artist. Yet even on that glorious night, with a golden statue in hand, Robin's inner battles did not simply vanish. If anything, achieving such success brought a new kind of pressure. How to live up to being Robin Williams' beloved icon. He would later admit that even as the accolades poured in, he often felt surprisingly alone. We see just the awards, the money, the superficial things. Underlying all of those things appears to be a man going through things we all go through, one psychologist wrote of Robin's private reality. In other words, depression and struggle do not care about fame. Robin had climbed the mountaintop, but the quiet heartache remained, waiting in the wings when the applause died down. By the early 2000s, Robin's life seemed settled on the surface. He was sober, still in demand in Hollywood. Even if some films were flops, he took it in stride, and he had a loving family. But no life is without storms. In 2003, while on location in a small remote town in Alaska for a film, Robin felt the old demons creeping back. He was isolated, alone and afraid, as he later described. Decades of constant work had kept his insecurities at bay, but now they gnawed at him. One fateful day, Robin walked past a liquor store. After 20 years of sobriety, something in him faltered. Maybe just one drink, that insidious voice whispered, and Robin let alcohol back into his life. I thought maybe drinking will help, because I felt alone, and it was that thing of working so much. And it was the worst thing in the world, he said regretfully of that moment. The first drink felt warm and wonderful, he admitted, and then quickly spiraled into a nightmare. Within days, he was drinking round the clock again, as if that 20-year dam had burst. Robin kept this relapse hidden at first, even as it stretched from days into weeks, then months. For that first week you lie to yourself, you can stop. Then your body kicks back and says, no, stop later, he explained. Days turned into 3 years of secret drinking. During that time, Robin's career and public image remained outwardly intact. He even continued acting. But the shame was piling up inside him. He described doing things he was ashamed of while drunk, things that caused disgust, and that's hard to recover from. His loved ones noticed the changes. Finally, in 2006, his family could see Robin was in trouble and staged an intervention. Robin agreed to go to rehab, understanding that the addiction he had kept at bay for so long had sunk its claws back in. Ever the performer, he initially tried to deflect with humor in group therapy, riffing to lighten the mood, but eventually he let the facade fall and did the hard work of recovery. He got sober again, for good this time. It wasn't fun while it lasted, he said of that relapse. Most of the time you just realize you've started to do embarrassing things. Out of rehab, Robin returned to his life chastened yet determined. He threw himself back into Alcoholics Anonymous, attending weekly meetings. Have to. It's good to go, he said of maintaining his sobriety. Still, he couldn't escape the feeling that he'd let down those he loved. His second marriage to Marcia, the mother of 2 of his children, had been crumbling, and Robin's relapse was the final straw. Though he was sober by 2008, the damage to the marriage was done, and they divorced that year. Robin carried tremendous guilt for this. In fact, guilt seemed to be a constant companion for him. He later married a 3rd time and found happiness with Susan, a graphic designer, but he never forgave himself for what he saw as failures, failed marriages, time lost with his kids. He was firm in his conviction that he was letting us down. His oldest son, Zach, said sadly. That was sad because we all loved him so much and just wanted him to be happy. His children tried to tell him he had nothing to apologize for, that he'd been a loving father, but Robin could never hear it. He wasn't able to accept it, Zach explained. That guilt stayed lodged in Robin's heart. Amid these personal trials, Robin also faced a major health scare that would change his perspective. In 2009, at age 58, he underwent open-heart surgery to replace a failing aortic valve. The surgery was successful, but the recovery was intense, physically and emotionally. "Oh God, you find yourself getting emotional," he said afterward. The doctors had literally cracked open his chest, and Robin felt like they'd cracked open something in his soul too. "It breaks through your barrier. You've literally cracked the armor, and you feel really mortal." Post-surgery depression is common, and Robin experienced it in force. He described waves of vulnerability and tears that would come out of nowhere. But ultimately, in classic Robin fashion, he tried to spin the positive from it, realizing mortality could be a blessing, prompting him to slow down and appreciate life more. He did seem to slow down a bit after 2009, taking fewer projects, spending more quiet time with family in San Francisco. Friends noticed a mellowing in him. He'd sit calmly at the dinner table, far from the zany onstage persona. He was, it appeared, finding a measure of peace in this new chapter of life. Sadly, the peace would not last. By 2013, Robin Williams was in his early 60s, and from the outside, entering a gentle twilight of an incredible career. He had a loving wife, children who adored him, and the adulation of fans across the globe. He even embarked on a new venture, a TV series, The Crazy Ones, in 2013, returning to the small screen where he'd first found fame. But during this time, something was going terribly wrong beneath the surface. Robin began experiencing a baffling array of symptoms that he couldn't explain, and neither could his doctors at first. The man who once had the memory of an elephant on stage, able to ad-lib for hours, started forgetting his lines. His razor-sharp mind felt mired in fog. He developed crippling insomnia, nights when sleep simply wouldn't come. He began to feel anxiety like never before, a gnawing panic that flared up unexpectedly. Even more strangely, he noticed a loss of his sense of smell and frequent digestive issues. Little things started to go wrong. He'd misjudge distances walking through a doorway, or his hands would shake with tremors. Robin knew something was very, very off. Paranoia set in. He grew suspicious of his own mind, wondering if he was going insane. By late 2013, these symptoms intensified dramatically. Robin's wife Susan later described how it was like playing whack-a-mole with an ever-changing list of ailments: constipation, heartburn, sleeplessness, memory loss, paranoia, looping thoughts, high cortisol levels. Every week some new and frightening issue emerged. Robin, the man with boundless energy, now found himself utterly drained and confused by his own body and brain. He underwent numerous medical tests. Doctors were puzzled. The symptoms spanned neurology, psychology, and physiology. At first, some thought it might be just severe depression or anxiety disorder. After all, Robin had a history of depression, and these cognitive problems can accompany that. Indeed, Robin was battling depression during this time. The sparkle in his eyes dimmed when he wasn't pretending for others that everything was okay. Close friends could see he was suffering internally, even as he still cracked jokes to put them at ease. But depression alone didn't explain the breadth of what was happening. Finally, in May 2014, a diagnosis came, or what they thought was a diagnosis. Robin was told he had Parkinson's disease, a degenerative neurological disorder. The diagnosis made sense of some symptoms: the tremors, the shuffling gait he'd developed. When Susan heard Parkinson's, she actually felt a small relief. At last, an answer, something to fight against. But Robin's reaction was different. Being told he had an incurable illness that would progressively rob him of muscle control and more, it weighed heavily on him. Do I have Alzheimer's? Dementia? Am I schizophrenic? He peppered the doctor with questions, desperate to understand why he felt his mind unwinding. The doctor said no, it was just Parkinson's. But Robin was unsatisfied. His gut told him this wasn't the full story. He kept saying to Susan in private, "I just want to reboot my brain." Imagine the agony in that statement. A man famed for his lightning-fast mind now begging for a way to restart it, to clear the glitches he could feel but not control. That summer, Robin tried to continue working, perhaps hoping that routines and creativity could keep the ever-encroaching darkness at bay. In early 2014, he had been filming Night at the Museum, Secret of the Tomb, reprising his cheerful role as Teddy Roosevelt. But on set in Vancouver, colleagues noticed with concern that Robin was struggling like never before. He would fumble his lines, something unheard of for the usually impeccable pro. In the evenings, he'd call the film's director, Sean Lewy, multiple times, voice quivering with insecurity. "Is it usable? Any of this usable? Do I suck? What's going on?" he would ask repeatedly. Lewy would reassure him, "You are still you. The world knows it. You just need to remember that." But Robin's morale was crumbling. He confessed to Lewy that he was terrified he was losing his talent, his Robinness. It was as if a lifetime of self-doubt came crashing down all at once, amplified by the misfiring chemicals in his brain. His dear makeup artist on the film, Cherry Minns, saw it firsthand. "He was sobbing in my arms at the end of every day. It was horrible. Horrible," she remembered. This man who had spent decades making others feel better now ended each workday in tears of despair. At one point, Minns gently suggested that Robin consider going back to stand-up comedy, just as an exercise, thinking maybe the live feedback of an audience's laughter could restore his confidence. But Robin just broke down. "I can't, Cherry," he said. "I don't know how anymore. I don't know how to be funny." These words are among the most heartbreaking ever uttered by a man who embodied funny for so long. To hear Robin Williams say he no longer knew how to be funny is to understand the depth of his torment in that moment. The light that had burned so brightly within him was flickering, being slowly snuffed out by an invisible disease. Despite his brave face, Robin was descending into a personal hell. In July 2014, he returned home to California with Susan. He was formally diagnosed with Parkinson's, yes, but he felt there was more to it. Something else wrong in his brain that no one had pinpointed. He battled constant anxiety and paranoia in those final weeks. Nights were restless. He'd thrash in his sleep, caught in vivid nightmares. He grew quieter, as if afraid to say the wrong thing or unable to find words. Susan later said she could see he was growing weary, like a warrior exhausted from an unwinnable fight. And yet there were glimmers of hope. In late July, they shared a lovely day out, a trip to the art museum, a walk, a dinner date. Robin seemed almost himself again during that perfect day. Susan dared to feel optimistic that maybe, with the right treatment, they could manage this mysterious illness. But on August 11, 2014, the fight became too much for Robin. In the early morning hours, Robin Williams took his own life in his home. The news broke later that day and shocked the world. Fans were crushed. How could a man who gave us so much laughter and inspiration be driven to such despair? Fellow comedians and actors flooded media with tributes, struggling themselves to understand. Many pointed out that depression does not discriminate. It can strike anyone, no matter how bright their outward persona. In the immediate aftermath, the assumption was that depression alone had caused Robin's suicide. But when the coroner's report came in a few weeks later, the truth was even more startling. Robin's brain was ravaged by a disease no one knew he had. The autopsy revealed the presence of diffuse Lewy body disease. In simpler terms, Robin had suffered from Lewy body dementia, LBD, an aggressive brain disorder often misdiagnosed as Parkinson's or Alzheimer's, characterized by protein deposits, Lewy bodies, that disrupt normal brain function. Doctors who reviewed the report said it was one of the worst cases they'd seen. Nearly every region of his brain was under attack, his widow Susan later explained. The disease had been an unseen terrorist inside his brain, as Susan poignantly called it. Robin Williams hadn't stood a chance against this internal villain. All those disparate symptoms now made horrific sense. The Lewy bodies had caused hallucinations, cognitive impairment, Parkinsonian motor symptoms, and severe psychiatric disturbances. In Susan's words, he experienced himself disintegrating. The man who had run circles around everyone intellectually was being robbed of his essence, piece, by this cruel disease. And he knew it. He felt his genius slipping, and it terrified him beyond measure. Robin Williams' story is tragic. A man who gave everything to the world yet couldn't escape the darkness within. But it's also profoundly human. Proof of how one soul can touch millions. After his death, the world mourned together. Fans stood in candlelight whispering, "Oh Captain, my Captain," and leaving genie drawings at Disney. People who never met him felt like they had because for decades he made them feel seen. His loss sparked something bigger, an awakening about mental health, about masks, and the hidden battles people fight. If even someone like Robin could struggle, then no one should feel shame in asking for help. His life and death became a catalyst for awareness of depression, addiction, and the silent cruelty of Lewy body dementia. Those who loved him most remembered not the comedian but the man, kind, gentle, endlessly giving. His daughter Zelda said he'd act sillier just to calm nervous fans. Friends recalled how he paid hospital bills for strangers or helped addicts in recovery. Never for attention, always for love. He once said, "The saddest people try their hardest to make others happy because they know what it feels like to feel worthless." For Robin, laughter was both sword and shield, a way of saying, "You're not alone." His legacy isn't his death. It's everything he gave while alive. He revolutionized comedy, made us seize the day in Dead Poets Society, and showed us compassion in Good Will Hunting. Even his struggles taught us something, that recovery is messy, human, and worth fighting for. His openness inspired others to speak, to heal, to understand. In Night at the Museum 3, as Teddy Roosevelt, he says softly, "Smile, my boy, it's sunrise." It felt like his final gift, a reminder that laughter, light, and love always return. Robin's spirit still echoes, in every laugh, every tear, every clip shared on lonely nights. His story reminds us to check on our smiling friends, to be kinder, and to protect that little spark of madness he spoke of. Because he never lost his, he shared it with us. And now, it's ours to keep alive. So as the curtain falls on this story, we don't say goodbye to Robin Williams with only tears, though they are surely here. We also say thank you. Thank you for the laughter that still echoes, for the wisdom hidden in the jokes, for the comfort your characters and comedy gave us in our own dark times. Your life was a tapestry of comedy and tragedy, Robin, and through it all, you taught us about the extraordinary depths of human empathy. Wherever you are, I hope you found the peace that eluded you here. And I hope you know that down here on Earth, when we think of you, we don't just remember that you died, we remember that you lived, and that you made our lives brighter. Jeannie, dear Jeannie, you're free. Oh Captain, my Captain, you are free, but you will never be forgotten. Thank you all for watching. If this story touched your heart, make sure to subscribe and join our community, where we tell the stories that stay with you forever. Your support keeps these stories alive.